Oh,
There we
what a
go.
sweetie.
Isn't she
Okay.
cute?
Oh my gosh. How old is she? Must be about 6 months.
Yeah, she was born on February 13th. So
Oh,
what is
she's
that?
only like 4 months.
Yeah,
Wow.
she's a big girl.
Oh my
Her
gosh.
dad is big.
Sweet. Now, who is she?
She's Asia, so
Yep.
she's our exchange son's daughter that we went to Bosnia to meet.
Oh, how fun. Oh,
Yeah,
how
let me
delightful.
show.
Is it a Muslim family?
It is, yeah.
Hey, Ross, good to see you.
And that was really fun and interesting to learn a little bit about like their blessing ceremony
Yeah.
and they sacrifice an animal.
Oh, really? In honor of the baby?
In honor of the baby, and they said they asked Allah to that we're giving you
Yeah.
this animal
Yeah.
so that you will not take our daughter, you know, or that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
I'm saying it
Yeah.
wrong. It's a little more beautiful than that.
Yeah.
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 You have any paper? I don't have any paper.
I got lots
I
of
have plenty
paper.
of paper.
How do I do that? Sorry, no critique forms to share.
Oh, this is Johnny Polka.
Oh,
Hi.
nice
And
to
I was
meet you.
telling him
Hi.
that we have critique sheets.
Well,
And he thought it was such a good
we
idea.
usually do.
Here's
You'll
what they
have
look
to-
like, but I cut the bottom off.
Oh,
You'll
He
have
has
to
a
come
long
back
thing.
next time and then.
I brought blank sheets of paper.
Yeah,
We're
that'll
good.
have to do. Yeah, I don't.
You say Johnny?
have any
Yes.
blanks.
Is that what you called it?
Yes.
Did anybody, does anybody want to start I'm not to read, but Anybody
I
wanna
can, I've
start?
got a nice sized piece of paper
Ross.
here.
You're Ross. Jean, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And you are
Jean.
Jean. I met you before sometime.
I think
you
so.
ready, Laura?
Yeah,
Maybe here, but maybe.
probably here.
Yeah, probably here.
all the noise sounds the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you reading, Laura?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll read.
We did.
Changed your mind.
Oh, okay.
Ross, are you reading?
Yes.
Do you want me to
I
write
don't
it
care.
down?
Just write anywhere. I don't care.
Put you down second.
Okay.
Jean, are you reading?
Nope.
Becky? Bob, are you reading?
No.
Johnny, you're reading.
You're first.
I'm number 1. Okay.
As far as I can tell, that's this is
Becky, are
zero,
you?
no.
Okay.
And no steps tonight, huh? No step, no
Not
Jenny?
yet.
Yeah, she's usually here pretty early when she comes.
Yeah.
I wondered
Gail's
about
coming.
tonight. The weather report was so bad. I thought, oh, is everybody gonna say we don't dare go out? And I- No,
Yeah.
not gonna do that.
That's, yep.
Gail might get here like
It was really coming down there for
Woman?
a while. Yeah.
I'll put her down. Just
She said she was going to, I think.
I know, yeah, so she might be here by 6:30.
so that she
If we
can-
have a moment, can I talk about that group list?
Yeah.
And texting, because some people have their name attached to it and some don't. When I first started learning how to text, I kept thinking, why doesn't anybody sign there? It's not like an email, right? Or you can't really tell what's coming from unless they've identified themselves on a little face thing or something. So I was trying to match up some phone numbers with who's what. And I think I put something up for me, but I don't see what I put up. So if you got something that did that, am I identified now
I
as
can see-
JC or my
can
face or
see you.
something?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
but I don't know if other people can.
Yeah,
I
people
don't
that
know
just
if
have
I
a
added
phone
you
number,
as a
yeah.
contact to do that.
I think you have to put it into your phone yourself.
I think,
Right,
yeah, you have to make your own, but then if Becky's not in my contact list, for instance,
Mhm.
then it won't. It will just give me
Mhm.
her phone number.
Oh.
And my cousin was doing that. I kept thinking, I said, who are you? My cousin was writing to me and I really didn't know her phone number, so there is a way
So
to do that.
Jean, are you the
My name on your
952240?
contact list.
I don't know.
Ross.
That's what I'm gonna check. Laura, what did you ask me?
Are you 952-240-9187?
Yeah. Do
Okay.
I not come through as anything but a phone number?
I hadn't put your name to it
Okay,
yet,
oh, okay, yep.
so I'm going to do that right now while I'm remembering, so I know next time, except I might accidentally call you because that worked easily. I can
Oh,
never
I-
remember how to add
I
contacts.
call people by accident. I don't know how to hang up. I mean, I alternately, I mean, some days I do and other days or I call them immediately when I'm trying to hang up. I'm really calling them again. And did you mean to call me? No, just ignore anything. I just feel like I should be able to master
Oh,
this.
so I have Jean Carrollton, right? Okay.
So then it should come through. Okay, well, I just was gonna ask about that because I'm new.
But I have a bunch of
Didn't know
people
for
that I
sure.
don't
But
have
I should get my phone out.
Gail has struggled with the same thing. And I know I should put my name in and I forget and
Yours is. When I get a thing from you, it's,
So-
well, but we've emailed and stuff, so
Yeah.
you're in my
I'm in your contact.
contact list. That's the key, I
We-
guess.
Johnny, we have a text group that we text back and forth and Dee kind of champions it for us. She'll say, you know,
Oh, yeah.
I'm coming on, you know, we're gonna be there on Tuesday, and then we all kind of chime in who's coming and who's not
By text.
by text.
Well, yeah, we did that because not everybody had Facebook, not everybody had email. It just seemed to be that text.
That's
At that
interesting.
moment, everybody had it. It is interesting.
I
And
should
so-
also get Johnny's email in case he wants to get the recordings each week.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Lisa, you have my email, right? Because we've been trading emails.
I do, yep.
You're Becky Hope, right?
So I can send it to you, Laura.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
then I'll get him added to the
And
list.
are you're not the same phone number or
We don't
anything,
really
so.
have a
No.
formal
Okay,
organization. Very informal.
Miller, you
Whatever
said?
works,
Miller.
right?
Oh.
Great.
If it
Close,
works, it
my
works.
brother-in-law's Bob Mitchell, is that close enough? No.
Sure.
Did you want
Oh,
to
Jenny
share?
did make it.
Oh, yeah,
It's
Jenny.
Genny.
Did you want to share
Can't start
anything
with those,
before
huh?
Laura goes about what we were talking about, or do you prefer to do that after the recording?
Yeah, I'll wait till.
Yeah.
Jenny, are you reading tonight?
Yeah.
All right.
How many do we have?
So if Gail reads, we have 7,
Oh.
and I think we should probably plan that Gail's reading. And so we should get started.
Yep.
We're already, yeah.
Laura, you're up first.
All right. So I'm going to read another blog entry tonight that I might consider sending in to apply for this position as a columnist. I haven't proofread this at all. I wrote it years ago. At a glance, it looks okay. So we'll find out. I wrote this back shortly after sorry, my phone fell. Shortly after I took the trip to San Diego for my son's graduation from boot camp. So it is called Medieval Devotions, Moose, and the 4 Last Things. I wrote earlier about medieval devotions. I wrote earlier about how Bruce, our GPS, lured us into a field of marauding moose in a vain attempt to try to kill us. Okay, it wasn't quite like that, but it could have been. Life, as I learn over and over again, is what happens when we're busy making other plans. Our road trip was uneventful in the sense that we got there and got home safely, but many things did not go according to plan. I didn't plan, for instance, to have water leak all over my carefully handwritten directions made just for the event that Bruce tried to mislead us. I know him well. My plan was the better part of 2 full days at the Grand Canyon. Instead, we spent a relaxing morning at the Mount Peel Sanctuary and Retreat Inn, visiting Chris, Tig, and their dogs and horses that do equine therapy work, and getting to know Jeff and his daughter, who were there on vacation with a friend. I planned on taking the shuttle on to base, only to find out that despite being told otherwise, there was not a shuttle to every event. We planned a quick stop to take pictures of the Rockies, and instead had a very lengthy stop sharing the hospitality and coffee of Daly and his 3 dogs and his traveling companions. We didn't plan on ending up at a Spanish Mass in the Rockies on Easter Sunday. We most certainly did not plan, sorry, I lost my place. We most certainly did not plan on driving deep into a forest on a rutted dirt road and finding ourselves among the moose. We planned a return route through Wichita, Kansas, but all my sons joking about taking left at Albuquerque aside, someone apparently did take a wrong turn. Can't blame it on Bruce this time. And we ended up in a completely different state than we planned. It was fine. It was an alternate route home that had been among our choices anyway. One begins to wonder, what is the point in planning then? Well, this is where Bruce and the Moose, which is another blog piece, intersects with medieval devotions, medieval thought, and the idea of the four last things. It's not an idea that has disappeared, but far less well known today than it once was. The four last things, with which Neil was no doubt familiar, are death, judgment, heaven, and hell. Let's leave aside for the moment the question of believing in the last three. Many people don't, but the concept has a great deal of wisdom to it, whether one believes in these or not. It certainly engages the creative mind and has for centuries. A painting attributed to Hieronymus Bosch in the early 1500s depicts the seven deadly sins and the four last things. A search on the term today shows several books using the four last things in their titles. The idea is simple and applied to many fields other than faith and philosophy. Start from the end. Where do you want to end up? Now, plan for that. How does an author want the story to end? Plot the end from the very start. How does an architect want a building to look? Plan it that way from the start. How does a composer want a piece to sound? Know the end before you start writing the piece. So it is in life. Where do you want your life to end up? What do you want people to say about you at your funeral? How do you want to be written about, should an author ever choose to work you into a novel? What do you want who do you want at your side in your last moments on earth? What do you want your memories to be when you're on your deathbed? Start from there and your life begins to write itself very differently. The balance or flip side to this is that things do not always go according to plan. You find that people are telling unjustified stories about you. You may be unjustly blamed or accused. The economy may crash or technology change such that your degree doesn't pan out as it was supposed to. You end up taking a different route home than you planned. How's that for a profound allegorical statement? And yet, if we don't plan, we don't even get close. We end up not finding a hotel for the night at all, or finding one that costs 3 times what we can afford. We end up acting on whims or living each day with no thought to where it's all taking us, but only to our own pleasure of the moment. And slowly we find ourselves painted into corners of our own making. Of course, as one of my taglines says of Sean, nobody is all good and nobody is all bad. Many people manage to plan at least somewhat, as Sean plans what he wants, where he wants his music, his career, his public relations, his concert, and his sales to end up, but fail to think about other aspects of their lives, as Sean fails to think about where his hedonism is taking him. He lets his desires of each moment pull him along like a leaf on a river. As much as he is in charge in some areas, in others, he lets life carry him along until he's in a corner, wondering how he got there. We've all known people like this, stumbling into forever with one person while their behavior is screaming to everyone who can see that they are not in love, or taking a job that everyone else can see they hate, because they let life and impulse decisions pull them along with no thought to what the end result might be and whether that was really where they wanted to end up. Have they thought what good they want to put in the world, what legacy they are leaving, who they want to be at their side when they face the trip into eternity, whatever that trip might hold? And I don't know if that's kind of a bit of just dropping off, but that's the end.
That makes a good ending.
Okay, that's good to know. Like I said, I haven't looked at this in years.
Laura,
Anyone else? Yeah, Lisa?
Now this, you want to have published in,
It's already published on my blog, but I can apply for this position to be a columnist at a pretty big site. And so it's an entirely faith-based site. So I'm looking for pieces that have to do with faith on some level or another. And this is one that I'm considering submitting.
I like the story a lot. I think at the beginning you name a lot of people,
Okay,
but you name their names and then we never hear about them again.
okay,
And I think you could, I don't know, for me, I would, if I were reading that article, I'd be trying to think now, who are these people, and try to remember, because they're coming back and then they don't come
Okay.
back.
okay,
So you could maybe just say, you know, my son and his family, or, you know,
okay,
something like that. And then you say the travel was uneventful, but yet it was eventful.
okay,
And so maybe choose a different word there
okay,
to describe that. And then the same with, I love how you say, like, think about the end of your life and what you want.
mhm,
And then your life writes itself. I like that turn of phrase, but then you say your life writes itself differently. But
okay,
maybe a different word than differently, like succinctly, or I don't know, more organized or something like that, or more focused.
okay.
And then the other thing is, will people know who Neil and Sean are?
Exactly, yeah, and that's something I realized as I was reading this, so I would have to add that in.
Or just take like their names out and still keep the content in, because
Okay, I'll probably just add in my novels, Neil and Sean, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Russ?
One of my philosophies is that it's more important to know what you don't want to do than it is to know what you expect to do.
Okay,
Huh. Okay, yeah, that's kind of true.
Because that limits you.
okay. I see a hand up. Is that Jean?
Jean, yep, Jean and then Jenny, okay? Okay.
Yeah,
we-
I'm trying to remember how to make my
You done?
picture
Yes,
smaller
yes.
so I can make all of you bigger.
Yeah, I was captivated. I was getting everything. I'm not as used to hearing as having
Uh-huh.
already seen the text, so it's really quite a bit different. But I really like the repetition of plan, the plan concept. You plan to do this, or you don't plan to do that, and I
Okay.
like that purposeful, I assume, repetition of that
Yeah,
Very-
yeah, it was.
plan. I don't know about so many of these things, but the four last, I've heard of the 7 deadly sins, but I've never heard of the 4 last things, so I jotted those down. And when you said Sean, I had no idea who that
Okay.
was. I thought it was probably
Yeah,
yourself.
Sean and Neil are the characters in my 5-book series.
Oh,
And so because I had written this blog with the intention that my readers would be reading it, I didn't bother saying who they were because I figured the readers would know. But for this purpose, obviously, that's not,
So would
excuse me, not the
anybody,
case.
yeah, would anybody be listening to this or reading? It's not a audio, it's a reading blog.
Yeah, yeah. And if I submit it for this position, which, you know, I'm so busy every day, it's been a week and I haven't done, I will change that and make sure it's clear who Sean and Neil are. And that's, you know, a good point for anything else I might submit for me to watch for that myself.
Yeah, if some of the readers aren't familiar with your work, how can you write that? I thought too, I have a little different philosophy about knowing where you're going.
Okay.
Because I think there's this other flip side where sometimes you just fly by the seat of your pants and discover wonderful things. And as a writer, I don't know the ending. I've listened to a lot of author talks that say, oh, they know the whole thing in their whole head and they know the ending, and it may change, but they know it. And for me,
Well,
I can't even remember if I knew the way I wanted my book to end. I think I had an idea, but I know I didn't end it. I couldn't
And
end it for 80%.
I was kind of laughing as I read that because I'm positive I didn't know the ending of
Right,
my book,
okay.
so I was looking at that going, who wrote this?
Yeah.
I'm not
So
sure I
that
would like that.
comparison seemed like too didactic to saying, you know, that's what you need to do to know where
Mhm.
you're going to be successful. And in my case, both in life and in my writing, I sort of what do they call it? A pantser. I just sit down and see what happens.
Yeah,
Well written as always. You're coherent.
thank
and
you.
Succinct. So
So
Jenny?
5 minutes to go.
okay.
Jenny?
What was the title of your thing again? It was medieval.
Medieval devotions, moose, and the four last things.
Moose.
Yeah, medieval devotions, moose, and the four last things. It kind of built on another piece I had written about
Oh,
how the
okay.
GPS took us
Okay.
into a herd full of moose.
Okay. Well, I really liked the four last things. I thought that was really good. And in the beginning of your thing, you kind of name a lot of people that we don't know who they are, and we kind of similar type thing in last week when you read. But
Uh-huh.
once you get into this, I thought it was really good, and very thought provoking. And I like even that title, having four last things in the title. I think that's kind of a cool thing. As far as having a plan, I think some people have a plan, some people don't. You know, I mean, it was meaningful what you said. You know,
Yeah.
not everybody
Yeah.
goes that way, but a
Well,
lot of
it's
people do,
as
so.
far as life philosophy, it's a very old medieval idea that has lasted, that you better think about where you want to end up on your last day. So you don't just get to your last day and go,
Great.
boy, I blew it.
Mhm.
So, and it doesn't mean that you have to plan every single detail, but just, think about the big picture, where you're going to end up in eternity.
Yeah. Okay.
Becky?
So people have mentioned like too many names and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I really the moose thing really appealed to me. Is there a way you can bring that actual story into this and then maybe
Yeah.
have some of those other details?
Yeah,
And then
good.
the painting into a corner, of course, is a cliche, but I liked the metaphor of going down the river. And I wondered if you could continue that.
Okay.
Something that applies to floating down the river and getting stuck in a little eddy or whatever you call it.
Okay.
And then I just thought at the end, maybe you come back to the Grand Canyon trip, since that was how you started.
Okay.
But yeah, good stuff.
Thank you. Bob?
I thought, the core of this was good. You had this, the stuff on the peripheral on the outside that people had already mentioned might need a little trimming up, but
Mhm.
The planet from the end is great.
I'm sorry, the what from the end?
Planet from the
Oh,
end.
plan from the end.
Plan backwards.
Plan, not planet.
Yeah. But you might have had one too many examples of that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Also, you had this self-referential statement where you said, how's that for an allegorical whatever?
Uh-huh.
I guess that might be a style. I thought, it just stuck out to me.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else, or are we out of time?
No,
Dee?
she's
I
referring to her own
just,
style of writing in the
I
writing.
wanted something at the end to kind of like help me to solidify
Okay.
all of those thoughts. And maybe go back to the beginning,
Okay.
have the beginning and the end sort of mirror. It doesn't,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's just something, it was abrupt.
Okay.
So
Use
are you
beginning
would
to
that,
wrap.
like, summarize in a sense, sort of pull everything together in some statement? I can't remember actually how the
Not
end fell off.
necessarily a summarize, but something
To
that
clinch
the
it.
writer has arrived at in a sense, or it advises, or
I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe Sean or Neil, or maybe Bruce passed, Bruce. GPS that
like a
lost its-
final thought.
Our GPS had an Australian accent. That's why we called it Bruce.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So the other piece was Bruce and the Moose because he dumped us in the middle of Elves.
As far as,
Yeah, you can say that.
okay.
Do you consider you're writing an essay?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Try that.
for the blog stuff, it would be.
Ross,
Yeah.
you're up.
Oh, I'm up.
Yep.
Okay. First, my question is to you, I've got two titles. Two titles. Which one do you like?
How many you got of those pieces?
That's just two titles. So which one do you like?
What are the two titles?
Sorasidium.
Yeah,
Like Sorasi- okay.
Sorasidium, which is sororicide,
Okay.
you know, and the other one is deception.
Okay.
Because I agree with Jenny, pronouncing it and knowing what it means. I would look at that and think, this is
Can
a.
you read it?
this
Huh. Yeah, I
is
can.
academic for me.
good point.
I like the way it sounds.
I got another one.
I think we're good. I probably wouldn't like this. So we've got it. You guys need to-
Did you have that one?
Okay.
got one.
Yeah, thank you.
This is a story about a gentleman in his 50s. He's been widowed for quite some time. He was a police officer. And a woman came to him and said, "My sister is missing, and I don't know what to do about it. They won't let me file a death claim to get her insurance, but I'd like to find out what happened to her." And so he takes up this case and he's going to do it. The fact is that she killed her sister. I took over her name and assets and everything else. So this is in the story, quite a ways in the story. Anyway, and his name is Victor Catania. Alarm woke me up at 6:10. The room was still dark. I got out of bed, went to the window and pulled open the drapes. To the east, the sky was starting to lighten. "Full day ahead," I said aloud. I turned from the window, snapped the TV on, and went into the bathroom. On the shelf over the sink was a dish with a green and red packets of instant coffee and a small hot pot, which I filled with water and turned on. I emptied a red plastic into the plastic cup, then turned on the shower. Halfway through my shower, I stepped out dripping and adding the hot water to the cup. It's imperative to add the water when it's the hottest. 10 minutes later, I was clean, shaved, smelled of Jovan cologne, and had sparkling teeth with a hint of mint. I swallowed the rest of my coffee and was off in my rented Ford. My first piece of business was breakfast. Conveniently located across the street and a block south was the Mac and Don Supper Club, which I got 2 sausage biscuits and another coffee. The directions Harold had insisted to write down on a napkin, lest you get lost, were very detailed, and I did on Lilac Lane at 10:40. The cabin looked like it had started as maybe a bar or a restaurant. The deck in the front half of the building rested out over the water on pilings. A high-sided aluminum boat was on the was tethered to the narrow pier that reached out into the lake. Next to the cottage was a gravel parking area with a one-car garage and a brown Ford Edge parked in front. I parked next beside the edge, got out and looked around. The lake was still, alone, floating about 30 yards out, looked my way, sounded a brief call that sounded like babies crying, then ducked its head in the water and was gone. It seemed like this narrow bay was only a part of a much larger clear lake. Cabins, some with homegrown additions, and several large homes studded the opposite lakeshore. Boats were tied to the dock or on lifts. Swimming platforms floated near the lakefront. A flagstone walk led to the door. When I raised my hand to knock, the door opened. I saw you through the window, the woman said. She was a short, trim woman wearing faded brown slacks and an oversized white shirt that said, "Try me," in back lettering. She looked to be in her mid-60s with large dark eyes and a lot of salt pepper shoulder-length hair. "I'm Vincent Catania, ma'am," I said, reaching for my identification, "from Central States Insurance. I'd like to speak to Mr. Olson if he's available." "Sorry, we have all the insurance we need," she said, and started to close the door. I put my hand against the door. "No, ma'am, I'm an investigator," I said, holding up my ID up. "I'm investigating a claim regarding," she took my identification, looked at it, turned it over, looked at the back, then handed it back. "Finn is out back on the patio," she said with a smile. "Just follow the boardwalk around the deck. I'll meet you there." The boardwalk turned into a wood pier over the water that ended with a step up onto the patio. Finn Olson was sitting in a high-backed wooden rocker overlooking the lake, holding a piece of wood in one hand and a knife in the other. Behind him was a round filigree patio table with chairs. On the table was an open leather pouch with this, about the size of a dish towel with pockets. On it, an array of wood carving knives. Flakes of wood littered the deck around him. A dog, maybe a shepherd collie mix, at his feet leapt up and began barking as she came from the house into the patio. "Captain, hush the barking. Finn, there's a gentleman here to see you." Finnegan stood. The barking stopped. I stepped up onto the patio and held the back of my hand down for Captain to sniff. "Mr. Olson, I'm Vincent Catania, an investigator with the Central Plains Insurance." We shook hands. My information was you were a Coon Creek fire chief in 1973 when the Lynch fire happened. "No, I was a captain on the department when that fire occurred," Olson did it. "I retired as fire chief in July of 2014. "Well, I hope you can help me." "Then I just made some fresh coffee. I'll bring it out." "That'll be great, Annette. Thank you. Please sit, Mr. Vince Catania, Mr. Olson," I said, pulling a patio chair around. Seated, I watched Annette turn and go back in the house. "Mr. Olson, there's a question I often ask couples I've just met. It has nothing to do with why I'm here." Olson nodded with a quizzical look. "Okay. How long have you and Annette been together and how did you meet?" Olson laughed. "In March of 2003, she was part of a protest at the state capitol against the government involvement in the Iraqi war. I arrested her and several other protesters for disturbing the peace. The rest is our history." He was quiet for a moment and then a smile on his face. "Best bust I ever made."
What a great ending.
Oh. Just write whatever you want to write on it. Scribble all over it.
I don't have anything but
Yeah.
compliments.
Okay,
That's great.
thanks.
Ross, I thought the descriptions were great throughout, as always. I didn't think we really saw much of the house that he was going up to. That's the only thing I would suggest, is maybe giving some description of that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Ross? I really like the whole tone and your voice as a writer. It's very, very readable, and there's just enough little humor and fun stuff. My rented Ford even tells you something, you know, and I really like that. Mac and Don Supper Club, and it's not overdone. It just seems like, and I like the character description, the description of the woman, what she's wearing, and her t-shirt. Again, another little fun thing that makes you smile and enjoy it. I don't know what you want marked. I can't help but mark little things like double periods or something, just so you see them.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
whether when you revise it or how you revise it, it's at least marked. I like where you said, I have a question I often ask couples, and you do admit it's nothing to do with why I'm here. I think you might add, when you ask the question, how long have you and Annette been together, if you don't mind my asking, or something
Oh,
like that.
sure,
And rather than,
sure,
because
good.
it's sort of blunt to just say, and how did you meet?
Uh-huh.
But if you don't mind my asking, the guy could say, well, you know, let's stick to the topic or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's just a fun description of how they met. And yeah, thank you for sharing. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how people can write this fiction and add all the details that you do. 'Cause I don't know how to do that. So I'm extremely impressed, and I'm thinking this is parallelism. Becky, of course, would know. But I like in the second paragraph where it's just one example, we have the sentence. 10 minutes later, I was clean, shaved, smelled of Javon cologne, and had sparkling teeth with a hint of mint. So to me, it shows that you are, would the phrase be economical with words, because you use as few words as possible, but then with a hint of mint is not necessary, but it's a wonderful touch. I really like that. So yeah, how you put, you know, all these details in to describe a scene, to me is really wonderful and impressive. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Mhm. Anybody else?
All good.
No good.
Russ, I really like this, and it has some really nice detail. Was Annette, was she somebody else before? Did her name change?
I don't believe so.
Oh, okay. But
You have to ask her.
I really liked this. The only thing that I was kind of questioning, you know, it's great description of him in the shower and stuff, but it seemed like he was in the shower and then he was pouring hot water, and I don't know. I was wondering if he took the coffee cup in the shower with him. You know, it's the only problem I had. But great. I like the way you lead into the story, and the descriptions were great, and I'm glad to see your writing, and good for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I really liked all of this. It just gives you that feel of like this guy on the case, you know? It's just like, you can just visualize everything, really good descriptions of the scenes and the people and so on. I just wonder, like, when he gets up and he says a full day ahead, is there any little hint you can give us there about what his goal is from this meeting? Or does he have any doubts or anything, you know, just to kind of put a little suspense there or give us a little direction of where this is heading?
I guess,
With that.
yeah, I'll have to think
But
think
that's
about
the
that.
only
What,
thing.
the previous chapter is he's getting ready to go across the state and investigate some more stuff.
So we might know that already, but I think it's still,
Yeah.
it seemed like a natural place where he's,
Yeah.
the whole day ahead of me, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that.
Good point. Thank you.
Even some, I hope I get some questions answered, or just,
Mhm.
You didn't have the plan like Laura's.
You're right. Plan where you want to end up.
I like it very much.
Thank you.
And I just added some little notes because I wanted just a tad bit more of the description when you hinted at something like the guy likes to carve. So I wanted and I wrote it down, I wanted a description of what he was carving.
Okay.
That it looked like
Sure.
something.
Yeah.
And, and I just added things like, after the dog sniffs, does the
Yeah.
dog walk away?
Yeah.
Something like, I just added little things like that. But I really like the way that you structured that.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
I have one last question. You capitalize Clear Lake. This is, so it's a name called Clear Lake. Is it the one in Iowa?
Well, there's,
Over here too. in
I mean,
Minnesota.
I didn't know
Yeah.
because it was Central Plains.
no, it doesn't.
A
It-
different Clear Lake?
yeah.
Okay. thank
Yeah.
you.
There's one part where Captain and Finnegan, I wasn't sure which one was the dog. Was
It's
Captain the
Captain.
dog? And we have a dog named Finn in our family too. So that was even more confusing. So
That's
there's
just
one
you,
little
Jenny.
section where it's a little bit unclear as to who's the dog and who's the man.
Okay. Okay.
and again, you said this
Well,
is a way,
probably
this is
the
a way to
dog is
scam.
confused because he thinks he's
The
dog,
dog,
yeah,
yeah.
anyway.
If this is halfway into the story, we probably know the dog
Yeah.
already, maybe, but
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
vote for deception, even not reading the rest of it, just because of the difficulty of that
Yeah.
word. It would not pull me in, it would maybe turn me away and like,
Yeah.
Is that the Latin word? Because I later I saw you spelled it, you said the pronunciation was with a hard C. Sorocidium,
Mhm.
which would be like Latin.
So, Rokidium. Yeah,
Okay, well, that.
that,
Does
That-
it mean I killed my sister or what does
that
it mean?
means like suicide, it's just a word that
Or
states that
patricide.
a sister
Sister
killed her
side.
sister.
Sister side, yeah.
Sister suicide.
Sister.
Yeah.
Sister murder.
I'm
yeah.
sorry. Clear Lake's a
Becky,
city.
you're
That's nice.
Oh, yeah, Clear Lake, Iowa.
Sorry,
Yeah,
it's a city.
Yeah,
It's a
right.
city. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. She's just
So,
flinging it out.
this might be too much to read, but we'll
Yeah, didn't bring it up.
see. This is the,
It's okay, we do that.
Yes.
We just did the answer, so.
were there any others?
Thank you.
Any extras? No? Okay. So this is the last chapter of the memoir about my sister. The last part ended with her death in the hospice. And that was like the very end of that last chapter. So here's kind of the reflection of everything. After her death, Joey stopped by the hospice facility to thank the staff for caring for Ruthie. They let him sit on her bed. They told him how beautiful she'd looked, like a china doll, and that she'd been ready to go. Sitting in the empty room where she died, he remembered the days when he awoke next to the woman he married, thinking, how did I deserve an angel like her and to experience that kind of beauty? After he left the facility, he drove to my house and shared what he'd just been through. We hugged each other and cried together. Since I'd been divorced for almost 3 years, Joey's unfailing love toward Ruthie was especially poignant. My ex felt no such commitment toward me. Our split had been less than amicable. Joey and I were two rejected partners who felt each other's pain. 2 years previously, when Joey had joined me for an inner healing therapy session, I realized that God had given me, many years later, the younger sibling I'd pestered Mom for. He might be my ex-brother-in-law, but he'd always be my little brother. More than any two people on earth, he and I had been both captivated by Ruthie's charms and lashed by her rejection. Together we mourned her mental illness, our vanished dreams, and her premature death. When the tears stopped, we reminisced. Once again, as we had so many times over the last 17 years, we grappled with why. When Ruthie's life was finally blossoming with joy, when she had true love at last and years of golden possibilities ahead, why should schizophrenia steal her away? A few days before she died, Joey had reminded me of the Ritalin Ruthie took. For the first time, I researched the Ritalin schizophrenia connection. Suddenly, it clicked. Someone to blame. That shrink should never have given Ruthie amphetamine speed with her family history of schizophrenia. Just as meth users can develop acute or chronic psychosis, people who take that class of drugs and also have a genetic predisposition can develop schizophrenia. Whether I could prove it or not, that was my answer to the riddle of Ruthie's breakdown. Sitting in my living room discussing the should-have-beens with Joey, I floated that solution. Joey reached for his accordion file and rifled through it. He kept meticulous records of everything Ruthie related. With a flourish, he extracted a letter and pushed it under my nose. In her distinctive round-lettered script, she told her psychiatrist that she accepted full responsibility for any negative side effects she might suffer from Ritalin. Dumbfounded, I shook my head. Once again, she'd chosen to write her own rules. People say there's a fine line between genius and madness. Perhaps Ruthie had been walking that tightrope for years before her breakdown. Her mystical ideas, her out-of-body experiences, her elaborate theories, even her multiple purported early miscarriages could have been inklings of brewing psychosis. Possibly her gamble with Ritalin upset a delicate balance and plunged her into insanity with no safety net. Her illness left me with other unanswerable questions. Why was her version of schizophrenia so different from Mom's? Though I saw some parallels, Ruthie became fully entrenched in her psychotic world, while Mom, despite her whispering lapses, functioned mostly in the real world, except for a few stumbles into outright insanity, which she recovered from. Unlike Mom, Ruthie displayed a belligerent attitude that cut off her family. Mom's sweet, loving spirit overflowed to everyone around her, especially us kids. Did Ritalin cause brain damage in a way that trauma, even trauma as severe as Mom's, didn't? Or did each woman's underlying personality determine the direction she would go? I prefer to believe Ruthie's personality deteriorated from external rather than internal factors, but we'll never know for sure. What role did free will play in each woman's loss of sanity and ability to remain connected to reality? Did Mom's devotion to her family keep bringing her back to us? Perhaps her self-sacrificial nature enabled her to endure the pain of the real world for our sake. When I'm tempted to believe that Ruthie willingly chose her path, I remind myself that no one chooses a disability or mental illness. Yet part of me will always question whether Ruthie, like the stolen child in William Butler Yeats's poem, offered her hand to the fairy of mental illness as deliverance from a world that was more full of weeping than she could understand. Did a desire to squeeze a little bit more out of life that had been unkind to her inspire her to risk insanity for Ritalin? It's not for me to judge, but when I think of how easily she seemed to give in to those internal voices, I wonder. At times, I've chided myself for initially taking a spiritual warfare approach to Ruthie's schizophrenia. I could have immediately suggested a psychiatrist when Ruthie claimed she was under demonic attack. Because I sincerely believed then, as I still do, that the unseen spiritual world affects us, I accepted her feelings at face value, rather than recognizing them as the onset of schizophrenia. What relationship does the spiritual world have to schizophrenia? Proving the extent to which evil spirits influence or cause mental illness is impossible, but up to half of all schizophrenics have religious delusions. Mom had bizarre religious delusions during her initial breakdown after the fire, but not in later years. Did our strict Baptist upbringing push Ruthie toward insanity? That seems doubtful since none of her siblings became schizophrenic. In her case, 3 favorite topics that recurrently captured Ruthie's heart and imagination, religion, aliens, and motherhood, converged to create one grand delusion when she lost her grip on reality. It was the late great planet Earth meets Chariots of the Gods meets Hail Mary, Mother of God. Interestingly, in the delusion that swallowed her, she was the chosen one, not the middle child forced to take care of the new baby sister over whom everyone oohed and awed, not the teen who earned top grades in high school only to be ignored on graduation day, not the innocent wife cast aside by her husband, and not the passionate would-be missionary rejected by her preferred Bible college. Her mind enthroned her in a position that no one could strip from her. As our family struggled in vain against the system that makes it nearly impossible to get mentally ill loved ones the help they need, we felt the same frustration that thousands of other families have experienced. HIPAA privacy law lets mentally ill patients block their clearer thinking loved ones from crucial information. With families cut out of the picture, doctors must accept the inaccurate or incomplete details their mentally ill patients report. We gnashed our teeth against the maddening rule we heard again and again that unless Ruthie posed a threat to herself or others, we couldn't be forced to have psychiatric evaluation or treatment. In the end, she did pose a threat to herself, since her mental illness resulted in cancer running rampant before it was detected. By that time, it was far too late to address her mental illness. The guardianship ruling and its implementation were travesties of justice. Anyone could see that Ruthie was a vulnerable adult who had been neglected for 5 years, yet the court did nothing, next to nothing, to correct that situation. Although the judge stipulated a 4-month follow-up to determine whether Seth complied with the requirements placed on him, the county wouldn't automatically perform that follow-up. Joey would have had to hire an attorney again to bring another motion requesting that the original order be enforced. Outrageous. It reminds me of the legal system satire Charles Dickens created in Bleak House, Jarndyce versus Jarndyce, where people waste years of their lives in dizzying rounds of legal petitions and lawyer fees until their wealth and energy drain dry. The justice system failed again when I filed a formal complaint that Ruthie's guardian had allowed her advanced cancer to go undetected. After her death, I received a curt notice from the state agency saying they wouldn't investigate. It was a catch-22. When we complained previously, Seth's lax caregiving wasn't serious enough to warrant action. By the time his neglect had endangered her life, it was pointless to intervene. She was dying. Sadly, the United States currently has no workable system for dealing with mental illness. Okay. Maybe I better stop there then. Pardon me.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
All
an
right.
estimation because I forgot to try.
I'll stop there. Yeah, I'll finish it next time.
Becky,
Yes.
few comments. As always, wonderful. I don't know if these are things that would make it too long or outside the scope, but as I'm listening, these are things I would want to know more about as a reader. Does Joey anywhere in the book talk about how it is that he remains so committed and devoted despite how badly she has rejected him? How sure were you that Ritalin had anything to do with it? Like, did you have not a doubt? Or was it just more a straw to grasp onto?
In my mind, that is it.
Okay. Yeah, I would want you to say that in there, that
I guess
know-
I'm trying to walk a little bit of a fine line and not, I would say 100%. I am 100% sure. but
Okay.
That doesn't mean it's true.
Right.
Right.
Right. Well, and you can say that. You can say,
Yeah.
I have no doubt. For me personally, I have no doubt. But as a reader, I want to know are you just grasping at straws? Or is this sound scientific, you have no doubt sort of thing? I just want to throw this out there. And again, it's possibly outside the scope of this book. but Chris has actually started writing a book and done some very interesting research on the history of mental health issues, and found out that things like schizophrenia, some of these other mental illnesses, virtually didn't exist before the mid to slightly later 1800s. And that might be interesting to look into as to why, what that connection is with her. I thought it was a great recap of some of those important events of her life. I don't know if it would add anything to say, did the early abuse have any impact on this? That's one of the things. Kids who are abused will escape into their own minds sometimes. And I think that can come out years later too. And then I don't know if you might want to add, some frustrated thought. What's the point in Joey filing over and over again if they're not going to do anything the first time? When will they do something the 5th, the 10th? So what's the point? Maybe just a sentence to that effect. And that's all I had. I thought it was very good and heartbreaking.
Thank you. One of the things I was doing here was basically just going through all the kind of wrapping up a lot of the issues and where I came down on some of them, but there might not be enough transition between some of these. So if you felt that way, I'd be interested in knowing, or if you think it's okay to just go through that litany.
Well, I haven't been here for everything you wrote, and I hesitate to say anything that's not wonderful because I'm always in awe of how powerful these are. But in the paragraph, when you say, at times I've chided myself for initially taking a spiritual warfare approach to Ruthie's schizophrenia. When I read it again, I get it, I think, but you talk about spiritual warfare, and at face value, I think I know what you mean. But then when you say I accepted her feelings at face value, maybe you explained that before, but that might be I don't know.
Basically what it was, she called me and said, I'm hearing voices. I think I'm under, I think I'm under demonic attack. That was.
Well, I remember that.
Yeah.
But then maybe I'm having more trouble with the face value.
Okay.
Accept her feelings at face value. I don't know. That might just be me.
Or literally, or anyone else?
Unconditionally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We could even just leave out at face value, accepted her feelings rather than recognizing them.
Yeah, maybe just leave that out.
Or accepted her feelings as reality, maybe.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, good point, thank you.
Are you done?
I'm done.
Okay. I thought this page 2 and page 1 too. I think it's so good because this story there's a lot of sadness and a lot of just bad things happening, and to have you kind of go through this sort of thinking it through and sort of reasoning it out and different things like that, I thought that was excellent because it feels so needed at the end of this story that really is pretty horrendous. And the thing about Joey, the fact that he still loved her and thought she was an angel. It's like, what the heck? Where is he from? No, but I'm in a good. I've met Joey, so I know what kind of a guy he is. But I just thought this was so good. So
Thank you.
I don't know. That's it. That's all I can say.
Okay.
Well, I haven't heard more than maybe two of the pieces of it. I see I get the idea. It certainly is loving sister's angst at the whole situation. And it comes through loud and clear how frustrated you were and how much is wrong with the system and all of that stuff. I wondered about whether, and because I've only heard a couple, what I've heard is quite detailed and similar to this. And I just wondered, as the wrap up, as the end, it felt like it was too detailed to me a little bit.
Hmm.
Like I already knew a bunch of this stuff. And if I've just read this whole piece, I didn't feel a need to have to revisiting some of the same things that you did do. I mean, I kind of get it, but I think maybe a little more exposition, quicker review of like the big systems of the mental health care, drugs, instead of quite as many details, which again, you wrote this to get it out.
Mhm.
And you can
Well, I
always cut
think
stuff.
that the difference here is that here before I told it without the commentary,
Okay,
but-
now you're,
but now
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm reacting to
Yeah.
it. So I think that's the difference.
okay.
It's more
Yeah.
analytical this time.
Yeah, I just feel, I'm just looking at length.
Yeah.
And wrapping up a story and if some of the details can be cut and or stated more quickly, it might help with the readability.
Okay, thank you.
I'm up next, and I am gonna read something completely different. And I'll give you a little context here. If you want to just take one. So you all know my story. One of the characters in my story is Debbie. Debbie was on our trip in Italy together. She's a German girl, and she
This isn't a Matthew story?
no,
Oh.
this is the real life Debbie. And so she I have another one if you want.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in my story, she was always talking about her boyfriend. You know, I have this boyfriend and I'm, whatever. Well, the real life Debbie and her real life boyfriend got engaged and are getting married at the end of July. And it's going to be, they invited Scott and I to the wedding, and it's going to be quite the reunion because all of the people that were on that Italy trip are all going to be there, as well as their host families and their natural families
Wow.
who we've all met, and spent time with. And so it's going to be a phenomenal event. And of course, Debbie and Fabian's family and friends will be there as well. So I expect it will be a big event. It's going to be at a camp in Germany outside of Dresden, a church camp. There's a chapel there, and then we'll all stay on the property. So Hannah called and said, what I think would be fun is because there'll be several of us from different parts of the world that maybe we could read a poem or a speech or something all in our language. And she didn't know if we would all say a piece of it in our own language or, how it would work. And so I said, I can help with that, so now it's my job to come up with this profound, meaningful thing. My idea, and I'm not married to it, although I'm leaning toward it, is that I would write one piece that each one of us would read in our own language. And then Hannah, being the German of the group, would read it then in German last, so that everybody in the audience would be able to understand what it's read. Now, we don't know Fabian really well, except through Instagram pictures and from what Debbie has told us. Although I did meet him, and he looked at her so adoringly. She smiled and turned her head, and he just was like he just got a new puppy, and they've been already dating for a year. Like, he loves this girl like you can't believe. And she was so sweet with him, and seeing their videos and stuff, it's just wonderful. So anyway, this is my draft of my speech. And like I say, I'm envisioning it being read in the translated and then read in the different languages. Love for Debbie exists in all parts of the world. She is loved in Brazil. She is loved in Italy. She is loved in the US, and she is loved in Germany. We love her because of her smile, her fearless enthusiasm to experience new things, her laugh, and the way she instantly uplifts everyone she meets. The person who steals her heart has a lot of people to answer to. He must love her at least as much as we love her. Looking at Debbie and Fabian together, it's easy to see that Fabian is worthy of her because Fabian obviously loves Debbie so deeply. We love him too. I said that. Because Fabian obviously loves Debbie so deeply, we love him too. Our wish today is for their happiness and joy to continue to grow stronger over a long life together. Now, I'm not a speech writer, I'm a fiction writer. So I brought this for a lot of help and assistance. So please, you can tell me it's rubbish and you need to completely start over.
I just had a thought, and it might be stupid. I always like details. So, you say she is loved in the US, which would be by you and your husband, correct?
Yep.
Is there some specific thing, a little narrative, short detail you could say? And then maybe people from other countries, you could leave a blank. Maybe they could put, like, maybe the people in Brazil would have something else to say. Maybe the people in Italy would have something else. Just a thought. And again, it might be stupid.
No, I don't think it's stupid. And in my mind, I was thinking that maybe at the end of this, once they said their piece, then they could say a special message if they wanted. But it's kind of a fun thing to give a little detail.
Yeah.
And of course, there'll be several of us
Personalized.
reading it, so you don't want it to go on too long, because then people are like,
Well,
won't these foreigners sit down finally?
I'm working on a speech, although my husband forbid me from giving one, a toast at a wedding I'm going to in July. But I have a unique perspective because I saw the bride, how she talks about her husband to be with her students. And I'm the only one who saw that because I was the only one in the room at that time. So that's what made me think that.
I like that. Johnny?
I was struck by the fact that in your opening paragraph, of the four things that you list about her, one is smile and one is laugh, and one is enthusiasm. Those are all very external. That's what you see as an observer. I would go for whatever you feel you can say that's more internal, more about her, because suppose you didn't smile.
Yeah.
Would that make her less lovable? I wouldn't say that. And then in the second paragraph, people to answer to, that feels like almost like a negative connotation. That if you don't shape up, we're going to get after you, like that. This is a blessing for the future. So that also struck me.
Good. I meant it to be kind of like funny. Like you have a lot of people to answer to, so we're watching you, But I do, I like that. It's an audience I'm not familiar with. So it's
Yes,
good.
and it'll be an international audience, and that makes it extra difficult because everybody's coming from a different cultural setting.
And my sarcastic humor might not play well in translation, you know.
In their own.
And you
Yeah.
have no way of knowing because you don't know all of
I
these.
don't know.
You don't.
Lisa?
Yes, Laura.
Sorry, I don't know how to break in when you guys can't really see me there the same way. When he was talking, it did occur to me that are these all people who speak English so they can read this and immediately translate it?
The people that will be reading it, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
They're all
And
that were here.
okay,
So
my I don't want to say concern, but my question is, are they going to have trouble with some of these, like funny and idioms? Because I was doing some editing for Long Story Not a Friend, who's from Armenia, and she's extremely fluent. But every once in a while, I would catch things where she translated an idiom word for word into English. And so, for instance, she says, you might say to your boss, let's go roll in the hay on Monday. Well, in her language, that means let's get to this job. Let's get it done. And I'm like, Alona, you cannot say that. You just propositioned your boss in a very graphic way. And I don't know if there's any way to guard against something like that happening, but just something to think about.
something to think about. I know these kids really well, and
Okay.
and so I think we can have a conversation about that too, and just make sure. But I like that.
Will they be translating it ahead of time at all? Just,
Yeah,
might be a
yeah.
good idea to-
Once I get what I want, I'll send it to them so that they
Okay,
can
because
approve
idioms
and
are,
revise.
idioms are hard.
Even the word love can be different in different light. You know what I mean?
And Hannah said she thought it would be fun to have, like, there are different kinds of love. There's a word for friendship love, and there's a word for the love of a parent and a child, and there's a love. But in English, we have love. So
Right, that's what I meant.
Mhm.
yeah.
Right.
Lisa, to me, the most important of all of this is the way she instantly uplifts everyone she
Mhm.
meets.
That's the inner one. Yeah.
I
And that
thought,
is,
I thought, what did she do how did she do that? Or, could you give a detail about that? Because to me, that's the most important of all of it.
I thought about, like, as I was writing this, like all of the things I think about her and the experiences I have with her. But if it's repeated by the others, they all have their own relationship with her independent of me. So I struggled with that very thing, Genny, because I thought, I want to say, like, I remember when
But if
I saw Debbie and I had this experience with her, but then we'd each have to write our own speech,
isn't everybody writing their own speech?
Well, my thought is they'd
Oh.
all read this speech in their own language, but maybe that's not possible.
I don't know. To me, if you're not going to get personal, don't bother. I don't know. That's my philosophy. The best speech I remember hearing is when my grandson got married and his brother gave the shortest speech I've ever heard. And he just told about how when they were kids, they used to play Batman and Robin, and he would never let him be Batman. He was always Robin. And then at the end, he said, I'll always be your Robin. And it was short, but,
Yeah, but
It's
meaning,
it was
personal.
Yeah.
personal.
Because I have two sons
Yeah.
too, and I mean, that can't be from everybody.
Yeah.
It was perfect for him to say to his brother.
Mhm.
I was a little puzzled about, are you, there's a lot of people there.
Mhm.
And are other people giving toasts? And are you responsible for the toast from kind of about her? I feel kind of sorry for Fabian because it's a little on the spot, like we love her a lot and you better not. And even if it's sort of on a tongue of cheek, it depends on, are there going to be a bunch of different people saying, does he have family that's going to say,
Hannah
we love
said,
him a lot and she better, you know.
Hannah said that in German weddings, there's kind of a program and there's a lot of speeches. So I'm assuming we're gonna be pigeonholed into that program.
But you're sort of on her side. You know how they put the bride's guests on one side of the church and, you know, so is that going to happen? Or maybe it's not appropriate to have everybody do these words.
Yeah, so that's a good
Yeah, I don't
question. I
understand that
could,
part either. I mean, are they just all not wanting to do one, or was there no time for everybody to do one? Are you the spokesperson for all the different?
no, I think the thought is to showcase that there are people from all over the world at the wedding supporting Debbie and being there and being happy for her and Fabian and their love together. So that's the idea of them, like they could all do it in English, you know, say this thing, you know, a speech in English, which is a common
But
language
it's more
there.
for her than for them as a pair, right? I mean, to me, this seems more like a toast, not to their
Yeah.
joining, but to how wonderful she is.
And none of us really know Fabian.
Okay.
I mean, like I've met him, but I don't know that the others have.
Maybe
Ah.
that's what paragraph 2 alludes to. Maybe you could
Yeah.
add that somehow.
Hmm.
This we know about Debbie, but we don't know much about you, Fabian,
Yeah.
but you better live up to our expectations or something.
That sounds funny to say. You better live up to our expectations.
Or we know that you must be great because Debbie chose you.
Yeah, better.
That's what.
And then you
Well,
could be
and-
briefer, you
Love
could
my
just
box.
wish you both the best of, you know, blah, blah, blah. Because, and then you could go around if you want the different languages, just either saying love or, you know, some other thing a little bit. If they read the whole thing in their language, it might get kind of like a lot of people won't know what they're saying anyway. And
That's why I
Who's it
wanted to
for?
keep it brief,
right,
because they're not gonna know Portuguese,
right.
chances are.
So what
or-
they need to say is not all this, but just take a phrase or something to go
Well,
around
that was
after.
where I was going.
Okay.
So, so love for Debbie permeates the world. Then
Hmm.
Brazil says Brazil loves her for, the Brazilian says.
Oh, okay.
And then the Italian says Italy loves her for. And then you say America loves her for.
And it's okay if people don't understand what they said. For me, I think it's just cute. It'd be fun
Yeah.
to just have people say, yeah, blah, 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 and you go, oh, yeah.
You know,
sure, that's good."
In every language that I know, the heart is associated with love and sort of inner warmth. And I just wonder if that might not be an image that would work in a setting like this, because it could apply to both people, not just Debbie.
I like that. I like that. Good.
Okay.
All right, you'll probably see more
Another
drops of
version.
this to come. Thank
When
you.
is the wedding?
The end of July.
Oh.
So you're going to Germany.
Yeah, so we'll be July 23rd, and then we do the wedding, and then the whole group of us are gonna travel, spend some time in Dresden, Berlin, and then the Harz Highlands, which is, I've seen pictures on Google Image, an amazing
The
German
Harz
area
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
in the mountains.
Quite an ordeal.
Okay, so who's up next then?
Yes, it is Johnny.
Well, since I'm a total newcomer and I had no idea about how this would really proceed, I brought assorted options. And I thought it might be a good idea for me to show you what, just literally show and tell what I have written in the past, so that you will know where, from a writing perspective, I'm coming from. So first thing is, I am an immigrant from Slovakia, And there are several people in my family in the past who played significant roles in Slovak history. So at one point, I decided to write about my family, and it wasn't possible to do that fairly without telling the history as well. So I put together this book called My Slovakia, My Family, and it came out in both countries and in both languages.
How do you spell your last name?
Palka, Palka,
K-A?
Ka. Mhm. It's also a common name, even more common name in Poland, as it turns out. Then, let me do it chronologically. In the American edition came out in 2012. In 2015, I started writing a nature blog, I called it, but I don't like that word. I think of it more as a website on which I post essays about nature. And I actually brought one that I would like to read to you because it fits the framework, not only for that website, but also for the writing that I'm just beginning at this time. It's called Nature's Depth. And let me.
Have you lived in Slovakia?
I lived for 2.5 years when I was a child. We were
okay.
refugees from Hitler. We spent the war years here. We went back there after the war. Then we were refugees from communism.
Okay.
That was a complex story. So let me read you the opening essay from 2015 that sets the framework for nature's depths. And if anybody is interested, I brought some little cards that have the URL and so on. So this is how I started it, and it's highly relevant to the book that I'm about to do. 2 centuries ago, the poet William Blake wrote 4 of the most often quoted lines in English literature. The opening of his Auguries of Innocence, it is a passage that echoes my own experience. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. To see a world in a grain of sand, to peer so deeply into the nature of any one thing that the riches of the universe begin to be revealed. That, to me, is the essence of science as a quest. Not as a profession or a career, not as a niche in a complex modern society, but as a quest for understanding one's deepest nature. A quest is something deeply personal. You never know where it will lead, or whether that will be a reassuring or a threatening place. No matter, however. After all, you undertake a quest because the rewards of the process itself are so great. Speaking for myself, I have found that the more I have focused on the questing nature of my scientific work, the greater has been the joy and indeed exhilaration that I have derived from it. I hope that the words and pictures that you will find on these posts will convey some of that joy and exhilaration. The natural world is all around us, and we are an integral part of it. Just like all other animals, we human beings are nourished by the organisms we eat, and our lives depend on the oxygen of the atmosphere provided by the Earth's plants, and on the warmth provided by the sun. As far as we know from a scientific point of view, even our conscious experience is dependent on the workings of natural systems, our brains, although we lack any real understanding of how physiology and experience are related. In these essays, I want to focus primarily on the natural world that we seek out when we want the experience of connecting with other living things, when we want to engage with life in a broader sense. And first and foremost, I want to focus on the forest and its companion fields and meadows, a source of renewal for so many of us. Our national parks and even our city parks are primarily preserves in which trees are centerpieces precisely because they speak to us so deeply. We want to focus on trees and other plants also for practical reasons. They stand still, while animals are usually shy and reclusive. Every time you walk your favorite trail, you will see the same trees and bushes along it, albeit in different seasons. But you will be fortunate indeed to spot the wren you hear in the underbrush or the millipede chewing on the detritus of the forest floor. All life is available to us to observe and ponder, but plants invite our gaze in a special way. Finally, I want to focus not just on who our fellow planetary citizens are, on learning to call them by name, wonderful as that is. Rather, I want also to peer beneath the surface and focus on the nature of their lives. For example, most trees grow conspicuously straight up into the air, as do the subalpine firs of the windswept ridges of the Olympic Mountains in the photograph above, or the Sitka spruce in the silver forest on Washington's wilderness coast. How do they do that? How do their trunks know which way is up, and their branches which way is sideways, and their roots which way is down? And how come silver trees are silver, whether they are on the seashore or on the top of a mountain? Or another example, we know that plants, including trees, photosynthesize, that they use the energy of sunlight to combine water and carbon dioxide to make the sugar that feeds the world. But how does sunlight actually participate in photosynthesis? And what is sunlight anyway, and how is it made? Such a thread of questions quickly and wonderfully leads us out into the cosmos. Blake was right. We can indeed see a world in a grain of sand. And in these posts, the grains of sand will be living things.
Lovely. So this is a blog post?
Yeah.
Already up?
2015.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, can you, once you've done that, you can still have a book, right? Are you planning on doing a book too, or just the blog?
I am just starting to do a book that has part of its roots in this blog. And the blog, incidentally, is much more wide-ranging than this suggested. This said it be focused on trees. But, you know, the last post, which came out in February, is called The Inner Lives of Animals. And it has to do with animal emotions and consciousness, right? So it's very wide-ranging. But let me tell you why I brought this, because it is one of two aspects of the book that I'm just starting on and with which I will be looking for help. In 2019, my wife Yvonne perished in a really horrible automobile accident. We were in downtown Minneapolis. We were going to attend an Indian classical dance performance, because we have a very long history with India. And we were crossing the street, and the driver on cross street didn't see us. She was distracted by a car coming in the other direction. She made an extra sharp turn. She knocked us down. I was fine, and Yvonne was in the ICU for 3 weeks, and then we withdrew life support because it was so awful. In her memory, I have written 2 books. What I started was a memoir, and that memoir came out in, I guess it was February, and the title of it says exactly what it is. It says, The Journey Together of Johnny and Yvonne as Seen Through Johnny's Eyes. I mean, that's
Oh my gosh.
unambiguous statement of what this is about. On the way, I got diverted into a book in her honor that drew on the painting that she did, especially as she started doing this as she was approaching retirement. She was always a gifted artist. She was doing art even in grade school, but her parents persuaded her to be more of an academic. So she became a biologist, and a very, very good one. But art was always close to her heart. And she finally discovered a style of art that she connected with profoundly. It's Asian brush painting, otherwise known as sumie. And she picked it up around 1998 or thereabouts. And then she just got better and better, and she joined all kinds of societies, and she had works in national shows and all kinds of things. So we put together this book that has 50 of her paintings and 50 of my photographs of nature, and they were chosen and paired for resonance on unspecified criteria. So it was really quite, well, I just opened this by chance. Okay, she among other things, she loved to draw cute animals. And well, this is ice at Eastman Nature Preserve. I mean, they have nothing to do with each other substantively, but the black and white and this a little something about the way the pattern appears on the page and so on. Let's see.
Can I look at the blue book? I want to see the blue book.
The blue.
Johnny loves somebody.
The journey.
So the book that I am now starting is founded both on what we did for this book and my experience with the blog, because it's not going to be a repeat of the blog, because the blog is the substance of it is primarily science. I have worked on a language that is not restrictive, that is as evocative as I can make it. But what I write about is almost entirely science, not quite. This book will be very much more tilted towards the spiritual, but it will include some science. The other difference is that the blog is essays that are illustrated with my photographs. The book will be my photographs that are supported by my essays. So that balance will also be different. And I'm finding it very hard to conceive how to do this. So I will be very, very appreciative of any feedback that I can get from you folks along the way. And I thought the first piece I would bring you for a critique would be the first draft of the opening, whether that's a preface or a chapter or whatever. It doesn't matter.
And
It's not
that's
written
this?
yet.
That's this?
No. It does not
Okay, that's
exist.
something different.
Does
Okay.
not exist. That is 2015 for the blog. Right? We're talking about a book that is about to come into existence. Yeah.
I think that's a great idea if you want to share that.
Yeah.
If you want to come back, and that would be fantastic. And then you can see how if you like this
Yeah.
creative
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you started that piece at all?
Only in my mind,
Okay.
not on paper. And that book, by the way, I should say, that was written explicitly for family and friends and not for sale. This is for
So you
sale. The
can't have
history book is for sale.
Okay, but I can look at it.
You
Ken.
can absolutely look at it. And if any of you would like to have a copy, I will gladly give you one. It's just, that I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is not a commercial book in any sense. This is a gift in Yvonne's honor to family and friends. I have an editor I have worked with for 20 years, and she edits everything that I write. And she kept reminding me that I have to keep in mind our great-grandchildren who will be leaning on this book for their family's history and will not ever have met us. So our grandchildren are a completely different category. because we
Okay.
grew up with them,
How
right?
lucky
But
they
the
will
great
be.
grandchildren
Yeah.
will never have met Yvonne, and who knows when they will come into the world, whether they will meet me or not. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's an interesting thing to keep in mind.
Perspective, yeah.
Can you tell us again what your plan is for this one that you're going to be doing? This,
It will be a book of photographs, and I brought a stack of photographs just in case anybody wanted to see them. It'll be a collection of photographs that are ordered in some sort of way, not yet specified, and that will be a kind of a physical message that draws you in a spiritual direction, but in a way that is supported also by at least a bit of scientific
Fantastic.
understanding that goes with it, because science has so much to say about interconnection.
Yes.
Mhm.
Can
Let's have
I
a great
show
camera.
her?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, the great
yes,
lens.
Wow.
please. You can do anything you like.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Wow.
What is that a painting of?
That-
Is it,
That is a north, it's an autumnal scene.
okay,
It's the product of a particular version of Sumi painting,
Wow.
which she learned
okay,
in Minnesota.
Okay.
And it's not the way you usually think of paintings. What you do is you start with rice paper. That's the paper you normally
uh-huh,
paint. Instead of painting anything, you pour colored paints on it.
okay,
And let them spread and let them soak through the paper and into the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. So you end up with a colored pattern, and you let it dry. Then you look at it and you say, "Oh, what pictures does this inspire in me?"
that is really neat.
Yeah, that's.
I had never heard of that.
Oh, this is for Becky.
This is what, those two, a photograph and a painting paired.
Okay,
Can you see the little mic?
Johnny, I hope you come back. I hope.
yeah, what
Good
are
for
they
you.
of
I,
again?
I'm carefully
photo?
listening to the kind of feedback.
Yeah.
And it's
I don't know.
exactly what I will need.
Oh, okay,
It's
so
more,
it's not just my
Wow.
difficulty seeing through technology here.
yeah, well, that too.
Jenny, you're up next.
okay,
Those
okay.
are gorgeous
Photographs.
photographs.
This is
It was
Yeah.
blobs of ice.
Do you want to,
This is.
what? Do you want to just leave
I'm
those
so
there,
sorry.
or I
This is
I don't
a
know what to
beautiful
do
way
with them.
to memorialize.
Yeah, that's why it became a detour.
Sorry. Yeah, I got some ideas, so I hope you come back. Johnny,
Pardon?
I got
Well,
ideas, so I
maybe
hope
like
you come
they're-
back.
Well, I sure intend to.
I'm sure they are. Okay.
I like your perspective.
Okay, this is from what I was reading last week. And I did cut back on some of the stuff. I don't know, I decided to make a step without you guys.
Okay.
really.
I don't know if we can allow that.
Sorry, I wasn't here. Okay, well, it was based on some of the comments that people gave on their sheets.
Can I keep this?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so I'm starting out with Garden of Love. As time went on, I began to think more about the garden. It would be something to fill our empty lives. If we didn't do it now, it would be a weedy mess all summer. Now was the time. When I called Marcy, we talked for a long time. She said that it would be good to work on a garden, therapeutic for both of us. We could even make it a special memorial garden for remembering Andy. Maybe there could be a statue, a plaque, or a special tree planted in his name. I told Marcy I knew just the right thing to honor and remember him. Marcy said we could take it slow. She would bring the plans out and we could talk about them, then take it from there. There would be no pressure if I wasn't ready. We decided to use the purple and pink theme scheme as I had chosen before. except now the purple had taken on a new meaning purple was Andy's favorite color. It was also my mother's favorite color and a symbol of new life. Standing at the kitchen window one day, looking at the unfinished garden, I thought about how important gardens had always been to our family. Andy loved nature and he enjoyed sharing the things I loved. And that evening, I told Doug I'd like to start working on the garden again. I think Andy would want us to. And then I said, I want to make it a memory garden for Andy. And so we began. Doug ordered black dirt for the garden. Marcy had instructed us to start with the right soil for a good foundation. Finally, Marcy and I went shopping for plants. When we got back, we started laying the plants out. Marcy insisted we take before and after pictures. Many perennials were planted among the 4 huge hostas we had transplanted from the old garden. Purple Jacob's ladder, coneflower, and Maynite sage, pink shrub roses, and endless summer, hydrangea with the focal point in the corner, Doug's favorite flower, the wigelia. We placed 3 statuaries in the garden, a white angel blowing kisses, a boy with 2 white rabbits, and what has become everyone's favorite, Andy the bunny, is peering out from behind the hosta. The first year is the hardest, Marcy said. You have to baby it a little. Watering is the most important to establish the root system in the first month. Once a garden is established, it's time to sit back, sip your tea, and enjoy the view on an ever-changing landscape that beckons you to it. I was hesitant, but now I'm glad we went ahead with it. Now it's our job to watch it grow, nurturing it with gentleness and watering with love. As we piece our lives together one day at a time, we cannot replace what we lost, but with God's help, we can have peace again. We planted 29 perennials, 1 for each year of Andy's life, in shades of pinks and purples. With my mother's white peonies, there is something blooming nearly year-round. Over the years, there were changes in the garden. I learned that some of these plants were hardy, and some spread out too much and had to be moved. The world always needs more flowers. Changes in the garden. As the years went by, the garden didn't always fare well as life took its toll. There was strain from the hailstorms and winds that came off the lake. The hosta and smoke tree were taken by the storms. The mulch had scattered many times and the weeds had taken over in some spots. I took out the wild Russian sage because it was too wild, and the hibiscus died out. Sherry is someone special in my life for several reasons. A wonderful artist and storyteller with a beautiful heart. She came and helped me with the problems in my garden, but it was her stories and her way of looking at life that made me feel close to her. Her spirit emanated around her. She was such a gift to me when I really needed it. The first thing she did was reorganize my garden in front. Then later she planted a new garden in the backyard. I never dreamed that I could have such wonderful flower gardens, especially this late in life when it was harder for me to take care of them. It was getting hard for me to bend enough to do the weeding and planting. I met Sherry at church for Tuesday morning women's Bible study. She was the child care art teacher. One day she asked me if I had any items at home that she could use for the kids' class project. Every week they would do a craft. Beads or marbles would be great, for they were making walking papers out of cement. She pulled a colorful marble from her pocket and gave it to me so I would remember. A bright sapphire-colored marble with tiny flowers. I carried Sherry's marble in my pocket for several weeks before I gave it back. This marble was meaningful to her, as I learned later. She was one of those shiny people, shiny in every way. She stood proud and erect, a spring in her step and a smile on her face. Always welcomed me with a hello, and soon afterward, a hug. She greeted each child as if they were her best friend. There was a place in her heart for kids and all people in general. I'm not sure she ever knew how much her hugs meant to me. I was the older one in the women's group with no children in the nursery. I didn't really fit in with the close-knit group. My kids were already grown, but my granddaughter was there. Sweet little Samantha, a little shy at first, but then got to feel at home. I started talking to Sherry about my garden plans, my ideas. The connection was made early between us. We both liked kids and people, and she was an idea person. She liked books, and later I learned she even did a little writing. Obviously, we had creativity in common. Sherry started coming over and helping me with the small things at first, weeding the garden beds in the front yard, then drawing out a plan for garden islands to get rid of so much grass to mow in the backyard. Doug liked this idea. She drew the most gorgeous plants, just what I wanted, and used plants I liked that were hardy and interchangeable. These drawings were much more detailed and well planned out than anyone I had ever asked to do it before, nurseries or any other place. Her garden plans were elaborate, and she colored them artfully on graph paper with colored pencils, nearly works of art by themselves. She also valued my knowledge of plants. When she came to help me garden, she brought so much more. As she worked and I helped her with small tasks, she told me these interesting stories that fascinated me, and she gave advice naturally. She seemed to know about people and their nature. She mentioned her mom, talked about her kids often, and how she viewed life. She had experienced loss in her life and understood how I was hurting because of my loss. She knew about my son Andy's death several years ago. She told me about Sister Genny, who worked at the hospice in St. Paul when Papa died. Papa was her father-in-law that was well loved by their whole family. Her kids took it hard. Sherry shared Sister Jenny's philosophy of death, which was just what I needed to hear. She said, people you love, they never really leave you, and we are all connected. I knew somehow deep down that she was right. This Sister Genny seemed so wise, so knowing, and such an incredible servant. The people in my life have come and gone. Some don't get along with each other, as Sherry would say. The plants must play nice, otherwise you uproot them and plant them somewhere else in the garden. She had this wonderful language when she spoke in her soft voice. She would talk about the plants in the garden as if they were people. But it was her stories and her way of looking at life that wowed me. Spirit, nature, and love all wrapped up together. One of those people you want to be with often. Such a gift. I believe meeting her was a divine appointment. She talked about the memory ball and the person who gave it to her. How meaningful it was. I knew about the memory ball because I knew someone that had one. A memory ball is a silver ball with the earth engraved on it. Hers was for extra care and service to the Girl Scouts. There was always a story that went with it. A memory ball is a place to keep your memories. Sherry did a little writing herself. It sounded like she dabbled in a lot of things. She shared her fairy story with me, a children's story that was based on her own daughter when they moved into a new house. This book would do well in the book world because of the popularity of fairy gardens. Sherry is a wonderful artist, storyteller, and gardener with a beautiful heart. So that's the end of that part.
5 minutes for discussion.
Okay.
Jenny,
Genny?
were two separate pieces?
Huh?
Were these two separate pieces, one about Andy and one about Sherry?
Well, it's all part of that gardens in my life connections and legacy. It's all part of that. I suppose they are two different stories.
They felt very separate.
Okay,
Both, I think, stand alone well, but
okay.
hopefully you have like a little break in there or some
Yeah,
subtitles
yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah, there's little subtitles.
I love the changes to the Andy story and how you really brought Andy into that garden. That made it
Mhm.
really impactful.
Okay,
Jenny?
yes.
One of my first comments is well, why is purple the symbol of life? You might want to explain if you mean that like
Oh,
theologically from the, what do you call it? The rhythms of the year in the Catholic Church. I don't know if you were referring to purple being the color around Easter or if there's some other reason or if that's purely just a personal opinion. And then you say why you have purple. I think pink was the other color you wanted in the garden. And you don't say why that. So that felt a little unbalanced.
why
being
pink? Yeah, purple, okay.
Yeah, being more or less from Minnesota, when you said something was blooming nearly year round, I didn't really believe that. So you might want to specify in the 2.5 months when there isn't snow on the ground, there's always something blooming. And I don't know if you explained what fairy gardens are. I didn't hear it. You might want to.
Oh. Explain, yeah, okay. All right,
But a beautiful story, and I do like the way you brought Andy into it too.
okay.
Okay.
All right, Becky?
Yeah, very nice. Couple of things I wondered about. When I like the idea that you said Andy enjoyed the things I loved, but I think if you could throw one example in there, that would be cool. So when you start talking about Sherry, it would be nice to know that 3 years have passed
Oh, yeah.
since Andy's
Time
death.
passed,
You
yeah.
say that later, but it
Yeah.
would be nice to know that up front because
Earlier.
I'm thinking it's still like within the same year.
Yeah, oh, no. it was
And then
not.
I think you need just overall a better way of introducing that now you're going to start talking about Sherry.
Okay,
so
introduce Sherry,
you know,
okay, yeah.
One of the reasons my garden thrived is because of Sherry or a divine,
Oh,
someone God sent me to help me, my garden thrive was Sherry or something like that. Just
Yeah.
one sentence to set it up. You mentioned the marble, but you don't bring it back to what
the
what
marble,
Sherry's relationship to the marble was. I love that she's a shiny person. I love that. I didn't really understand how it got from you guys talking at church to her actually coming over and planting your garden. I felt like there was a step missing there that we didn't know about. And I don't know what a memory ball is. So if you can explain that more.
More about the memory.
Yeah.
ball.
And
Okay.
then you said her book would do well,
Yeah, the
but did
fairy
you
garden.
tell her that?
Oh,
So maybe if you did put that as, that you told her that. And if you didn't, why didn't you?
yeah. See, based on some of the comments from last time, I cut out quite a bit of the garden thing and the Andy thing. But see, one thing that I don't think you guys understood is we had the whole front yard tore up when he died. We were ready. So I can't just say, I can't not bring that in because,
Sure.
and also the peony thing was part of it too.
Why did you have a tornado?
We were gonna
Make a
plant, we were gonna make a garden
Oh,
and
okay.
put sidewalks in.
Oh,
And so then people came to the house and there was no, they could fall in and die on their way in.
I felt like
That
you
would be
did
bad.
say that it was torn up. And that's
Oh.
sort of when he died, so
Okay.
suddenly it sort of stopped everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you hadn't a desire to garden it.
I kind of liked last week's.
You liked?
Yeah, there were some aspects of it that I feel are missing.
Well, someone said, and I won't say who that person is, but
It's like D, you said last week.
somebody
blah, blah, blah.
said
Just kidding.
that was a story in itself, and I thought I was kind of going away from the garden.
Yeah,
No.
I don't know.
Oh,
There were certain aspects
Are
like,
you saying that what you read
hugging.
tonight replaced what you did last week?
no, I just trimmed down. I had a whole section about Linda and Marcy, and I trimmed, and about the Star Tribune story and all of that, and I took all of that out.
yeah, but what about like hugging the bunny?
Oh, yeah, the bunny's still in there, yeah.
But you didn't
Yeah.
talk about hugging it and like how comforting
Yeah,
that was.
no, that's still
Oh,
in there.
that's still gonna be there.
Yeah.
Well, we are
Okay.
out of time. Let's move on to D now, right?
No, not
Gail.
G.
Yeah.
Gail.
Yeah.
I will read, how did you know I said it? I will read fast, and I didn't know how many copies. I have 2. So I don't think
That's not enough.
I don't think that's enough. Now,
Pass those on to that.
I mean, I don't know the policy of making, I mean,
There is no policy.
I'm so impressed at how you people can not look at some, I said this before, he cannot look at something and grasp so much out of it. This is one of those things that I think I worked on it for many hours today. It's nowhere near finished, so I'm kind of embarrassed to show it to you. It's gonna take me months again to figure out what I'm trying to say, but it very closely relates to what we've been talking about. And, I guess I'm wondering if it has merit, or if I'm late to the party and everybody else already knows this. Okay, I don't have a time of that. I believed it in my heart before I heard the words. I had a vague meaning of the concept, but was not ingenious enough to express it aloud. Yet, when I listened to what was spoken in a simple way, I finally understood. And then it was blatantly obvious that the abundant lessons were all around me. All I had to do was pay attention. Look more, listen more, be patient. When I was a child, I was too preoccupied with what was going on inside me to truly appreciate the lessons of outside, although that is where I've spent every single moment that I could. When I was a teen, I was fascinated by what my friends and peers were doing and not much else. We could be outside having a party, for example, but did not notice the sunset came sooner after we set our clocks ahead in fall for daylight saving time, so we had to plan ahead to make it home by curfew. When in college, I could not concentrate on anything but academics and passing my finals in spring, so I spent countless hours in the library. My long-term plan was to graduate and start my new life, so I missed out on nature's lessons displayed in budding life in the vast outdoors. As a young adult, I was passionately pecking out others my age, specifically my future husband, rather than even notice any temperature change outside. When a parent of newborns and a constant sleepless fog, I was so preoccupied with their needs and my feelings, I rarely left the house. A few years later, my toddler son was utterly fascinated by every tiny ant, bug, and caterpillar he saw on paths and sidewalks. It was then that I learned to patiently ponder the meaning of other living things along with him, who was totally unaware of the restraints of time. I was privileged to have the luxury of time again when my young daughter discovered a shiny maroon leaf, you've heard this in another story, nearly hidden in a pile of others that called her to stop short on her bike when riding down a steep hill. This small, unique gift found in the natural world compelled me to contemplate. And from time to time, I was with someone in my family when we were given the opportunity to appreciate aimlessly swimming carp. I have to take out swimming along in the creek bar house. I held on to these experiences in my mind. Occasionally, I wrote brief stories about these, sometimes just thoughts jotted down on pieces of paper. For years now, these thoughts have been in disarray in my small office, the storage place for everything in my house that does not have a permanent place. About 2 years ago, prior to the simple but meaningful words my pastor spoke in her sermon, I realized I got inspiration about pieces to write while in nature. When I said this to John Palka, my friend, who is a Minnesota writer, he wrote me that was pretty common, even for him. That's happening to me more. I wonder if I am more apt to see the perceived messages in nature because I've entered my 6th decade of life. I have had many life experience from now, from which I find parallels and make connections about what I encounter, and that may provide me insight. Perhaps my semi-retired state has made the difference. Now I have more time to, I don't know what word to put there, on my leisurely walks. For a brief time, I foolishly thought that what I learned when outdoors and had put into words for students made me a great teacher. I wised up when I understood that God was the teacher, his lesson plans in nature, and I was the student. Shocking claps of ear-piercing thunder, tornadoes, or other weather phenomenon are not what inspired me. My purple vincles nearly magically appearing, the sudden arrival of fresh green shoots of my lily of the valley and hostas, and the advent of my white lilacs eagerly awaiting a totally sunny day to finally come to bloom, and the heavenly scent of my purple lilacs are what, I'm looking for the word, my attention.
Captivates.
I was thinking of it. And then I was going to add something that I found a long time ago. And it talks about, this woman wrote a book called The Middle of Everywhere. It's very interesting. And she was a psychologist and cultural broker in Lincoln, Nebraska, where the population of immigrants increased 120% in 12 years. So they said, hey, immigrants, let's take it to, of all places there. Anyway, I wrote down in the book, she says, for some immigrants, time is a river that flows through their lives. They have no abstract sense of time and no man-made way of keeping track of it. Many refugees allow time to unfurl, and they enjoy however much time they want with visits, celebrations, or other events. In some cultures, there is much sitting around. She goes on to say that although something is gained with schedules, much is lost. Anyway, I like this part where she quoted a woman who said from Pakistan, who said, Americans think it is a sin to do nothing. And a Spaniard said, Americans invented stress. And the author says she befriended a woman from Africa, a man from Africa, who said she wishes he would teach her to throw away her alarm clock, her watch, her personal planner, and watch the sun, stars, rivers, colors of grasses for information about time, and stay somewhere as long as she wanted, not to leave because she had something else to do. Does it have potential?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very much so.
Oh, yeah.
Does it?
Yes.
I'm not the first person to realize this, like, duh.
No,
The
it's a lesson of
first
life.
sentence that you, the first sentence or two
Mhm.
that you wrote made, say that again.
I believed in my heart before I heard the words. I had a vague meaning of the concept, but was not ingenious enough to express it out loud.
What were the words?
I can't find them. It's based on, I was desperately looking for, it's based on a series of sermons at my church. And I've been picking certain things out. And I have the transcript of a certain sermon by one of our ministers, and I can't find it. I know, but thank you, because that needs to be up front.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's too much hinting around till I get to the
because
point.
you grabbed me like, oh, now I'm interested. What are those words? But then I don't really ever find out.
Right. Thank you.
That's my only critique. It's great.
Thank you.
I just have a very, very serious comment here.
Uh-oh.
This concept, you're talking to a musician that we should just not show up on time. You just caused me a lot of stress. I'm going to have to drink my night away trying to deal with that.
What?
We must be on time.
Oh,
I'm a musician. Punctuality is my life.
Well, you're talking to someone who is rarely on time. And again, I apologize. Yes, ma'am.
Me? Oh,
And thank you for staying, people.
that little thing where you went through kind of some of the decades and stuff like that. I think it's almost perfect, just the way it is.
Really?
Couple
You
little,
like that?
couple little tweaky things, and it's ready to be published somewhere.
You think so? But
Yes,
where?
I do. Well, I can't tell you, but
But it also.
no, but it's this, and it's not like, okay, geez, I'm stupid, I didn't see this. But no, we all grow at our own pace. And I mean, I didn't see any of that beauty for many, many years.
Right.
And I thought my husband was just a dork because he saw all that stuff. And I
When
didn't,
you
I
went-
didn't get it.
When you went to,
Yeah,
The other
yeah, I
story,
didn't get it, but I mean, I don't know how old I was when I started to get it, so. To me, it totally made sense.
well, thank you. And I was gonna add some other things about it too, but the dovetail, well, not dovetail, but like Becky was talking about, there was a real excellent presentation at my church on Sunday about mental health, and they said something about May is something month. Mental Health Awareness Month, I
okay.
think. And September is Suicide Awareness Month, I
Oh, my
believe.
God.
But they said, I just think it was interesting because I could go into a story, but for me, and maybe other people too, who are challenged by depression, spring was always the most difficult for me. So it's
Really?
kind of like,
Really?
and I'm thinking other people too, because you want to appreciate new life,
Mm, mm.
but it's just overwhelming. You feel like
Oh,
crap.
maybe,
And it
yeah.
may be similar to Christmas. Everyone else is happy, yay, yay, yay.
But
And-
one of the instructions on these things for mental health is if you're having trouble, go out and look at some trees and some
Oh,
rivers and stuff.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And I can prove that
I
that
can too.
works.
I think that's true. Thank you.
I just had one comment, and it just is about structure. It's kind of like, what are you trying to say? Are you?
I'm still working on it.
No, but I mean, that was rhetorical, but, it seems to me that you're saying, ta-da, I have a new awakening. In my sixth decade
Yeah.
of life, I just saw
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, just keep writing all this stuff down, but maybe when you revise or restructure, you could start with that, just this sort of bold statement that, like you said it well, the sixth decade of your life, you just learned something.
I
And
mean, I could put that in the first paragraph.
well, that's what I'm saying. If you start with that, I think some of the, it felt rushed because I know you were trying to read fast, but about, well, when I was a, kid, I was this way, and then I was a teenager, and then I was in college, and then that kind of just took me out of, if I already knew that you had come to something big at the beginning, then maybe you can condense some of those steps along the way, just with examples from how it was in those different times of your life, and then come back to.
I fully expect this will take me the other article, November, December, January, February. It's just gonna take me another 5 months. Thank you very much. I brought in, I don't know if anyone came and got lilacs to my house, but the
Oh,
lily of the valley are on their way out. If you haven't
Did
smelled
you go
one,
get-
if you haven't smelled one, they're probably a goner after today's
I've got a
meeting.
bunch. I'll have to check.
How
mine.
are
I
you?
didn't see if
I'm
mine
good.
are blooming or not.
And Bunny?
Did you see
Bunny's
that?
good.
If
Um,
the lily valleys are coming?
Mine kind of,
We're getting older.
This
Okay.
little,
Don't like it.
this.
yeah, these.
She's doing good. She's
we
doing
should-
I didn't
good.
see any.
we should have
Her
10 of them. Well,
Gail
our lawn is
is every
shadier
night.
though, where they are, so.
So far,
you,
it's
ma'am.
good.
You're welcome.
She's been on it now.